Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's London Java Community Lightning Talks. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Abby. I work with Barry Cranford, who's the founder of the LJC, and I have the privilege of hosting this event today. The LJC is one of 15 to 17 tech communities that is run by RecWorks. They're all completely free and cover a variety of topics and expertise as well. RecWorks ourselves are a tech recruitment company, but with a massive difference. We believe that recruitment really can be a force for good in the industry beyond just placing people in jobs. We have a particular focus on learning, mentoring, and personal development. If people want to learn and others want to teach, we are happy to connect you through our communities and events. We see this as giving back to those we've worked with in the past, but also paying it forward to those we hope to work with in the future. To date, we've run over 700 different events for engineers, developers, students, graduates, and CTOs. We have run conferences, lightning talks, hackathons, all sorts. In January of this year, we made our 4,000th introduction through our Meet a Mentor program, and we're really excited to see where that's going to go next. As I've already said, we love to give opportunities for people to connect, and this event is part of that. If you'd like to know more about any of our other communities, please do get in touch with Barry, Helen, or myself, and we can take it from there. The recording of today's session will be available on YouTube in a few days' time. I can put the link in the chat for you later on. But with no further ado, we have four brilliant speakers today. We have Natalie, Nadia, Opemipo, and Carly. And so we're going to kick off with Natalie. Over to you.
Oh, okay. Right, let's share this screen, see if I can get this working properly. Okay, is that all working? Cool. And I can see people as well. This is very exciting. Right, so this lightning talk is very much an opinion piece on my experience working with a popular framework for the first time. I was introduced to it when I joined an early stage startup as a full stack developer back in November. Now, I'm not going to name the framework because it's not actually important, although I suspect a few of you may guess which one I'm referring to. But what I am about to say is relevant to any framework or library. Oh, and I can't change my slides. There we go. We all know tech is constantly changing. There's always some new shiny thing to come along for us to play with until the next new shiny thing comes along. Some stay the course and others fade out in the blink of an eye. But this particular framework has gained quite the following and a Marmite reputation to go with it that's split the front end community for some time now. I admit I started out with negative preconceptions that I formed based on reading about other people's experience. I've never worked with this before, but it predates my existence at the company, so I've tried to keep an open mind. I desperately want to embrace it and understand why it's just so popular. But 9 months on, I'm struggling. I still don't get it, and this is why. I really don't like reading the documentation. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not because I don't like reading documentation. I'm a big fan of it when it's written well and it's easy to understand and it's written for anyone at any level. So I'm trying to work out, is it because it's opinionated? Now, normally I don't mind that either. It can be a good thing if, say, for example, it means less setup choices for me to have to worry about. I can instead focus on what it is I'm actually trying to build. But I think this goes beyond that. It challenges my fundamental beliefs, and that's really hard to overcome. It expects me to mix CSS straight in with HTML, tells me that a horizontal line of abstract abbreviations is quicker to write, easier to read. No, it isn't. This is very much a personal opinion. I've spent years learning CSS way before I became a professional developer. CSS is written vertically. I prefer to keep it separate, still located with the HTML it relates to, but not all tangled together in the same file. CSS is explicit and it's easy to understand what's going on. Translating this instead into a line of non-conventional shorthand is not writing code that's easy for anyone to pick up. You better believe it, that cognitive overload as a newcomer to the framework is real, even 9 months in. But that's not it. It's made my day-to-day work harder. I've had to wrangle with cascade issues, but with most modern frameworks, this should now be a thing of the past. I found it to be inefficient. The way the docs advise to apply its CSS classes has made a rebranding exercise much harder than it needed to be. But that's still not it. It's the way the documentation and blog posts are written. It's borderline tech bro culture, which manifests in its cultish following. These followers can be very aggressive sometimes in defense of the framework if you make your views public on social media. So what do I find that's so toxic in this documentation? Well, for starters, I don't want to see this. I have a strong interest in accessibility, admittedly, selfishly for future me. I've got Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which at the moment it's causing joint pain, and I've got regular battles with migraines. When a migraine's brewing, I have to print things off sometimes. It's easier to read a sheet of paper than it is to stare at a screen. But that doesn't make me any lesser a human being. I've been rickrolled in the docs. Yeah, we can all laugh about that. But my first impression was, surely this is a mistake. And then it cropped up again in a blog post about latest releases. So is it harmless humour? Well, maybe. There's nothing wrong with a little humour in documentation. We don't want it to be a chore to read. But this type of humour, is this the time and the place? Is it professional? Let's swerve back to that blog post promoting their latest features. In it, I found a picture of a woman, and with her picture, it reads, yes, send me all your stupid updates. And yet, when the examples are men, well, Derek, he's an Astra engineer, and go Tom, he's made it to Director of Operations. It's 2022, come on. So I'll ask again, harmless humour? I don't think so. I get pretty irritated and grumpy whenever I have to work with styling now. I can't work with it without referencing the docs, but maybe I am overreacting. So I asked my 18-year-old son what he thought. Yeah, Mum, it's just a joke. You are overreacting. I talked to my colleague about it, asked him for his honest feedback if he thought I was overreacting. And interestingly, he showed that blog post to his 18-year-old daughter. And her response? Tech is still really broken, Dad, isn't it? So that conversation continued with my colleague, and we circled around, what does this mean to us as a company? We have strong values and ethics. We're a B Corp, very much people focused. Should we be making sure that the libraries and frameworks in our tech stack actually match those values? If we don't, are we compromising our values and ethics? And I started out calling this talk with popularity comes great responsibility, but that's not right. It suggests that when these projects first start out, it's okay to be sexist, it's okay to poke fun at marginalised groups. And then as they grow in popularity, it means as a community that we're condoning this type of behaviour. And there lies the problem. As a woman in tech who worried at first about entering the tech sector, it's not actually been too bad. Not perfect, but not bad. So I'm really sad at the growing number of articles talking about how we've taken all these initiatives over the past 10 years to try and redress the balance to make tech a more diverse community. But that's not happening. And this quote here, 3% of women would consider a career in tech. That's from an article this month. So what's turning girls off who are ready for university or work, for example? Well, tech is still really broken, Dad, isn't it? Harmless humour? I'd love to know what you think. Thank you.
Wow, what a great start to our lightning talks. Thank you so much, Natalie.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments that you want to share before we move on?
I think I'd just like to say you're not the only one. I look at those things as well, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't understand that. I don't get that. And I've seen it not just working in banking for 10 years, also moving into tech a few months ago. I'm with you on it. I guess, how do we fix it? I know that is one of the most awkward and horrible questions, but have you got any ideas?
I think we've just got to call it out, which is why I've done this talk. Because when I spoke with my colleague about it, it's actually my boss, and he was saying, look, if you do this, he said, we'll back you, but you could get a backlash for it. He said, if he did it, it would probably be fine, or it might not even get much attention. But if I do it, he said, be prepared. And are you okay with that? And that it shouldn't be that way. But if I do stay quiet, then it's not making it better for other people to join. And I want them to, because I love my job and I think it's a fantastic industry to work in. But we've really got to all work together to make it a better place to be.
Yeah, definitely.
Adrian, he just says, I feel your pain. I found a cure by keeping an open mind. It's very apt, isn't it?
That's a work in progress. I'm still trying that.
Yeah, I can imagine that's a real challenge. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for starting us off, Natalie. And next, I'm very excited to introduce Nadia. So over to you, Nadia.
Oh, thank you so much. Let me just share my screen. Okay, this is awkward, but I don't see an option to share my screen for some reason.
Should be there.
I don't know what happened. Can I try reopening Zoom?
Yeah, sure.
Again. Yeah, just 1 second. Sorry.
No worries. I love tech, don't you? When it works, it's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, when it works, or when it does what you expect it to do.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's all good though. It's all good. I can't believe that only 3% of women would think about having a job in tech. That's really small, isn't it? Really small percentage.
Yeah.
That's actually surprised me today, I think.
Yeah, I saw some scary stats about retention a while ago as well, like people leaving. It's definitely a very sad problem.
Yeah, yeah. And yet,
sorry about that. I'm back. Sorry.
Fabulous.
Could you make me a co-host so that I can share?
I have the button
now, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just have, so it should work this time.
Yeah, it works. It works now. Amazing.
Excellent.
Cool. Yeah, sorry about that. Never happened before, but
that's okay.
How it goes. Cool. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining in. My name is Nadia, and today I'm going to be talking about how to have successful one-on-ones with your manager as a software engineer. 5 seconds about me. I'm Nadia. I'm a full-stack software engineer currently working at Intercom. I'm active online, so you can follow me. I'm Little Hope pretty much everywhere else, and I'm Nadia in Tech on YouTube. So please subscribe if you're interested about content about building a career in tech. So when it comes to one-on-ones and how engineers perceive them, I think that in my experience, a lot of software engineers are a little bit confused about one-on-ones. A lot of them think that this is actually a waste of time, especially if this is a one-on-one that happens weekly. Other people just are not sure what the purpose of this meeting is, and they just feel very awkward with them. So I thought I would share my top 5 tips on how to have successful one-on-ones, and hopefully this will help other engineers listening to make the most of their meetings with their managers. So the first advice is that you should always come prepared for your meetings. So what I do at every job that I have, I usually create a simple document, Google Docs, doesn't have to be anything special, where I just write down everything I want to talk about with my manager during my one-on-one. And it's like a brain dump, so I don't really worry about what goes in there. Then on the day of the meeting, I go through the list and I just pick and choose a couple of topics that are still relevant and up to date, and I just forget about the rest. It is very important to come prepared because, first of all, your manager is also preparing for this meeting if they are, worthy of their title, if they're a good manager. So you don't want to come unprepared because this can lead to awkward meetings where you don't know what to talk about, and this is just not the way to go. So this meeting is important. Come prepared, take the time. Please remember that your one-on-one is not like an extended, weird, private version of a stand-up. What I mean by that is that you shouldn't be just discussing work updates with your manager. You shouldn't just be talking about blockers and things you're facing, or like how your current task or project is going. What I mean by that is that there are other venues, other ceremonies in Agile to do that. And your one-on-one meeting is a very precious time that you have with your manager, and it shouldn't be spent doing this thing. So usually what people are confused about is that, like, so what should I be talking about? And like, why shouldn't this be status updates? I think that if you're kind of falling down this route of just talking about status updates, it's usually a way to just fill the time without like awkward silences, but also sometimes it can be masking more serious problems and like more serious questions that you are not really raising. So when it comes to one-on-one, you should own it. So if you're wondering like, what should I be talking about? And this is generally like up to you. This is your meeting. Should be driven by you. The agenda should be driven by you. This is the only meeting that is about you, not about the team or the company or any projects or roadmap. This is just about you. So you can talk about whatever you feel like talking. Basically, you can share feedback on your work, on your projects. You can talk about long-term career goals. You can talk about how you're feeling about the work that you're currently doing, whether you're interested or bored. You can also share, something that is sensitive, because this is a confidential meeting. I mean, it's supposed to be a confidential meeting. And this is a place where you can share things that you wouldn't be comfortable sharing outside of, very private audience with your manager. So if you have a difficult situation with a toxic colleague, maybe you are struggling with something at work, or maybe you're having a personal situation or family issue that is preventing you from being productive, this is a place where you can explain this and kind of share it without it being too awkward, because probably there are some things that you wouldn't feel comfortable sharing with the whole team or with the whole a bigger group of people. If there is nothing to talk about that is kind of pressing, so if you have a one-on-one once a week, you might feel that there is not enough content, quote unquote, to talk about on the one-on-one. In this case, you can talk about longer term career plans and goals and kind of the direction you want to take with your career, because your manager can be your career coach and you can lean into that as well. So it is also very important to ask for feedback when you're having regular one-on-ones. Asking for feedback can be awkward, and it does get awkward. Like if you have negative feedback, then it's hard not to get defensive and start getting sensitive and emotional about it. And then if you're getting good feedback, a lot of people are very uncomfortable with it because it feels like you're just fishing for compliments and why should we talk about this? It's clear I'm doing a good job, but it's very awkward. So, but still you should be doing it, because the alternative for not asking for feedback is not getting it, unless your manager is really awesome and they're sharing it all the time. A lot of managers won't share it, so you have to ask. And if you don't get feedback on a regular basis, for whatever reason, it's not a good way to live and work, because if you are actually not doing well, then you will still learn about this during your performance review. Your manager will have to share feedback at some point, and then you might be surprised and learn that actually you're not doing that well at all. But also, if you're doing really well, you will never learn about it until your next performance review or later, and then you might just start feeling very resentful about this in a way as well, because you'll be like, I'm doing this great job, but nobody talks about it and nobody appreciates me, and you might start looking for another job. So you see that the alternatives really are not good, and you don't want to be in a situation where you have no idea how you're actually doing and you don't have any feedback from your manager. And it's important because your manager will be ultimately making the decision whether to nominate you for a promotion or pay raise and things like that. So this stuff is very important, but also you should learn how to take feedback and process it. But this is kind of a topic for another time. And my last tip is that you should be honest and vulnerable. I'm a big proponent of vulnerability, kind of up to a point, and there are cultural things involved and corporate things involved. And obviously, your manager is not your therapist or not your close friend, and you shouldn't be sharing everything with them. But also, I think that the general approach is that you should tell the truth, and if you cannot tell the truth, you should try at least not to lie. So if your manager is asking you how you're doing at work and you really hate everything that's happening there, you shouldn't pretend like you're really, really happy. So share your feedback and be upfront with them. Find a level of honesty that you're comfortable with, but just share something with them, because otherwise they might be taken by surprise if you decide to leave, or if you have further issues down the line. Use this time as lean into your manager. They are your ally. They can be your career coach. They can be your basically your mentor. And your manager's job is actually to solve problems. So if you need help, just ask them for help. So these were my top 5 tips on having successful one-on-ones with your manager. I hope they were helpful, and I'm curious to hear what you think. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think you're definitely right about learning to accept feedback, not as it's entirely criticism, but actually being able to take it on board, process what is intended by the feedback, and then be able to improve. That can be quite difficult in that moment to hear it how it's meant, can't it? So that's a really valuable point. Thank you. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions for Nadia? I will take that as a no. But there was a comment in the chat. I found one-on-ones a test of my communication skills, but after a few, I found most engineers I've had them with struggle with their communication skills as well. So we've all decided to make an effort to learn how to make small talk to make that process easier. I think that's a really interesting point you've made there, Adrian. Yeah. Excellent. Fantastic. So next up, because I can't remember the order, there we go. Next up, we have Openipo. Over to you.
Yeah, right. Hello, everybody. Nice to do this, and I would love to share my screen firstly before I jump into this. And yeah. So hello, everybody. My name is Openipo, and I'm 16, and yeah, I'm really excited to be doing this with everybody, and yeah, it's really exciting stuff. I'm speaking at London Java community, and yeah, it's my 103rd talk, so it's more like a lightning talk. So yeah, I would really love to do this. So yeah, guess what? We'll be talking about something really, really good today, and it's about maybe modern technology, yeah, and one of the latest and maybe the best thing you could ever find in Web 2. And yeah, so let's move to the next slide. And so of course we have to get our heads active before we could actually just hop into whatever we want to actually do. And yeah, we'll be talking about the accessibility of the web with Jamstack. So I guess you know what Jamstack is, yeah, JavaScript accessibility and markup. So we'll be talking about this, but firstly, if you want to reach out to me on any social media platform, you could use my handle at Coder of Lagos on every social media platform, mostly Twitter and Instagram. And yeah, I am 16-year-old developer advocate and application architect, because I'm really interested in making platforms more better with my DevRel skills. And secondly, I do not work for any company at the moment, but I'm looking for a role as developer advocate or DevRel. So I'm really open to DevRel roles. And I'm also a keynote speaker. Like I said, this is my 103rd talk. And also IBM champion for 2020, Couchbase champion, Ebola expert, and many other. Yeah, so here are some things I am pretty much interested in. I also did a community just like this of over 1,000 members, that's Jamstack Lagos. And also I do, I'm also an IBM champion, one for 2020, and also do keynote speaking and sort of that. So you could just follow me on any social media platform right there, just as you can see at the left side, at Kuda of Lagos, on my YouTube, Open was taught, and just as you can see, literally. So next, I forgot to share, I started exploring more stuff in technology, and I got into tech at the age of 11. So it's really exciting stuff. I've always been passionate about exploring technology, exploring different sides of technology, for example, Web3, Jamstack, AI, and the likes here. So next, what's Jamstack? Of course, when you talk about Jamstack, this is what I think of: bread and jam. But it's funny, yeah. But I really love Jamstack here. That Jamstack is, the J there is JavaScript, then then the A is API, then the M there is markup. So everything about Jamstack is this. Jamstack is actually just a couple of modern tools coming together to make the web pretty much more accessible. For example, we have Next.js, we have Nox, we have Gatsby, and the likes. And all these tools together are modern build tools and making the web pretty much accessible. For example, you could just write 1,000 of lines, maybe 1,000 lines of code with JavaScript. And then with maybe a Jamstack tool, maybe for example, Next.js or sort of that, you could just write maybe with 50 lines. So it makes the web pretty much more accessible, secure, and faster. So let's get the cat out of the bag. It's actually a modern architecture of the web designed to make the web pretty much fast, accessible, secure, portable, scalable. And also it increases the productivity level in developers. So these stuff actually makes up Jamstack. I mean, the scalability, portability, everything makes up what Jamstack is. And of course, the tools used in it. For example, we have hosting platforms like Vercel, Cloudflare, and the likes, which are actually Jamstack. They are actually Jamstack deployment tools. Yeah. So Jamstack has different tools for everything. So everything making the web pretty much more accessible. There is one for this, there is one for that, there is one for that. So everything makes the web pretty much more accessible. So let's get to the web without Jamstack. What's the web like without Jamstack? Of course, without Jamstack, we are using just JavaScript. And with JavaScript, everything was pretty much boring. For example, when we started using JavaScript, of course, like I said, we could just use 1,000 lines of code, then code whatever we want to code. But with Jamstack tools, you could just write something with 50 lines of code. And apart from that, they even have more features, making web pretty much secure. With just JavaScript, of course, there are vulnerabilities that some kind of malwares or so could just come into your website and maybe some sort of attack here. But with Jamstack, with Jamstack technologies, for example, Next.js and the likes, it is not that way. And then it also helps design too. But let's get into writing first. So Jamstack is the new standard architecture of the web. Like I said, it's just a front-end stuff, just making web secure, accessible, faster, portable, and all of them. So there are many things that actually make up Jamstack. Once again, it's a front-end stuff. Here is the Jamstack workflow. Just as you can see, of course, an average website, you just, every kind of website these days, even Web3 websites, you just use Figma for design, and then next, after Figma, you use Gatsby, write your code with Gatsby and all of them. You could use Next.js, you could use anything. But now it's become pretty much easy. Now we have headless CMSs, which are called static site generators. For example, more like WordPress, but they are headless CMSs. but not WordPress. WordPress is traditional CMS, for example. Of course, we have Gatsby, we have Ugo, we have Headless CMS, we have Graph CMS, we have Sanity, we have Boost, we have Contentful. All of them are actually Headless CMSs. You could just build anything you want to build with them. And of course, it has some backlogs actually with just with maybe Gatsby code and sort of that. It has some back code, whatever, but now it's become pretty much accessible. You could use headless CMSs to build an actual website. And for payment, for example, API calls and all of that. For example, we have Stripe for API, payments API option. We have Twilio, we have Portal, we have Snipcards, of course. We have many of them. And also, we have Cypress.io for testing, and Postman is a very, very popular one, for example. And for deployments, like I said earlier, we have something like Netlify, we have Fastly, we have Vercel, we have Cloudflare. Of course, I think Cloudflare is pretty much known to everybody because everything in Jamstack is based on CDN. You don't have to push something, or you don't have to force yourself to take something to the web. Everything is automated here. Everything is automated. So there is something we call automated builds. So it's actually automated here. So that's what makes up the Jamstack. And now, where do I get started with Jamstack? Of course, there are tools needed to get started with Jamstack. Jamstack is pretty much easy stuff. You could just use, of course, if you have a basic knowledge of JavaScript, you know what Jamstack is already. You know how to use it already. You should know how to use it. And just know how front-end tools work. For example, if you work with React for once, you should have a very wide understanding. Okay, this is how Jamstack works. This is how this works. This is how that works. So it's very, very easy stuff to get started with. So how have we made Jamstack more accessible in the past 5 years? For example, like I said earlier, we have headless CMSs. Of course, you don't have to be writing code to create maybe a Jamstack site. You could just use an headless CMS. For example, we have Agility CMS, we have Ugo CMS, we have StackBit, we have many of them. You could just do whatever you want to do. And of course, after then, we also have open source frameworks like SwiftKit. SwiftKit is really popular, and it's an open source framework you have to get familiar with if you are actually getting into Jamstack. And also modern build tools is another thing, and also automated builds. More like it's similar to modern build tools, but not exactly. But automated builds is everything you do is saved on the CDN automatically. So it's not, you don't have to stress yourself to put something in there. So Jamstack accessibility, I think it's clear to everybody. Jamstack is pretty much open to everybody. And why you should get into Jamstack. Of course, what's so special about it? Of course, I've been saying Jamstack since, but I think you could have gotten some points there. But it's honestly, on my end, I actually feel it is maybe too open to everybody. Yeah, it's very open. And of course, we have communities these days you can actually join. For example, I have a community of mine, Jamstack Lagos. You could just join a community, talk about Jamstack related stuff, and then people help you out. Of course, there are conferences based on Jamstack. Of course, maybe Jamstack conference 2021, 22, whatever. But really, it's really exciting stuff. And community is also a part that makes Jamstack even much accessible. And what makes up Jamstack? Like I said, scalability. Your website becomes more scalable automatically if you use a Jamstack tool. Also, portability is another thing. Then developer experience is one important thing. Of course, DX. If your developer experience is good, I mean, it's everything. Then, of course, hosting and maintenance. If you actually have it, it's pretty much easy to maintain. Then it has a very fast performance. If you use maybe Next.js for your website, you'd notice the way you use maybe React is going to be different from the way you use Next.js. I mean, in terms of performance, very fast. And apart from that, there is also scalability and then security. So like I said, your website actually becomes more secure. There are no much vulnerabilities or attacks being in your website. And yeah, Jamstack, I think, is the best stuff in Web 2.0. Maybe everyone is saying Web 3. I got off the hype. So it's maybe the best stuff in Web 2.0. And of course, it gives better UX and DX. Yes, I think it gives much more better UX, because not just DX, UX is also a thing, because when you use Next.js, there are maybe Next.js or Gatsby, for example, there are some things you could actually do that React might not be able to do in terms of even design and all of that. And DX too is another thing. Yeah. So Jamstack makes the websites you create with it very fast, accessible, scalable, and everything will be on CDN. Yeah, so Jamstack is easy stuff. And yeah, thank you very much for having me. See you very soon. And you could follow me on all social media platforms at Scholar of Lagos. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I just had to move rooms because of my background noise, but I'm back. We've had a question on the chat again. Someone would have loved to have seen a little demo of Jamstack, so maybe that's something for a future talk would be great. Right. But also they've said, out of curiosity, is Jamstack effectively another React, Angular, Vue, etc., that kind of thing?
Yes, it's almost the same, but not exactly the same. So Jamstack is not another. It is a couple of technologies. For example, I think Vue is there. Vue is in it. It's a Jamstack tool, of course. So you could actually use Vue for the Jamstack, but it is not something you have to really say you want to learn an entire thing. You could just use one. You could just have one thing, you know, and then use for the Jamstack. So it's not you going to learn a whole thing entirely. So it's actually maybe a feature of modern web.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really cool. Really cool to hear from you. And last but by no means least today, I will hand over to the lovely Carly, who helped me sort out some tech issues earlier before you all came into the meeting. So she knows her stuff too, which is always good to know. Over to you, Carly.
Thank you. Great. Let's share. Last but by no means least, as you said. Cool. Can I get a thumbs up? Wonderful. Okay, cool. Right. So as Abby kindly introduced, my name is Carly. I am a developer advocate at Elastic. And as of last week, I am also an Elastic certified engineer. And that is exactly why I'm here talking to you all today. So I have my own experience that I went through over the past few months with doing all the revision and learning Elasticsearch and ELK so that I could take a certification. But a secret you don't know is that my husband took an AWS certification last year. So we've actually been comparing notes a bit on what the experience of certification is like. And from that, I have some tips to share with you today for anyone who is thinking about taking the certification and doesn't know where to start, or has it coming up, that exam is looming and they're feeling a bit panicky. So I'm hoping I'll share some of my tips today to try and help you on that journey, and also maybe help you with some of the revision prep as well. Okay. So tip number one I have for you today is to find out what the format of the exam is. And this is very important because depending on the type of certification you take, it will be different. The Elastic certification I recently took is a practical exam. So you have a series of tasks that you have to complete within the time limit. And it's things like searching, set up ingest node pipelines, all the stuff that's covered in the topic lists, which is another thing to note. Normally the topic lists are covered on these certification sites as well. However, the AWS Solutions Architect certification that my husband took last year is actually a series of multiple choice questions that you have to answer within the time frame. So it's important to know what the format is going to be, because that means you might focus more on practical elements than bookwork, for example. It also means you'll know what topics to cover because you'll look at the topic list in advance and check it off as you go along, hopefully. And the other thing is that if for any reason you need to, particular adjustments, perhaps you have a particular disability or challenge that means that you might need extra time or some other kind of adjustment, it means you can also contact the certifiers in advance and find out what's available and get that sorted out, which many of them will be able to do. So definitely find out about the format before the exam and in plenty of time too. The second thing you need to think about is your exam environment, because that can have an impact on your nerves, and it can also have an impact on how you're going to feel on the day. I am hoping no one is going to consider, as much as the view on this slide is absolutely lovely, I imagine the Wi-Fi is a little bit patchy there in that tent for taking a certification exam. So this is another example where I have some good differences to share. I took what was a home proctored exam. And that means that I had a person watching me on my webcam, which does seem a bit creepy to start with, but it was fine. I had to have a clean desk and I had to show that via my webcam. I was allowed a single screen and that was it. So I had to have the lid of my laptop closed. And as I found out right on the day when I was starting my exam and the proctor told me, I couldn't have my headphones. So it's definitely worth thinking about that environment first. However, my husband, he went to an exam centre, so that was very different, okay? He didn't have any control over the desk or the setup. It was all there for him. He was allowed the computer they gave him and his paper, and the only thing really that was common in our experiences was both of us had to have our national ID ready so that we could say that we were who we say we were. So these things can have an impact on maybe your nerves or your comfort, so it's important to think about what environment based on the options is right for you. And furthermore, it also might be worth thinking about things like interruptions or noise and how much that's going to impact you. Might have been less of a problem in this situation if the Wi-Fi was a bit better. But for example, in my situation on my exam day, it was a lovely day. I had the windows open so I could hear my neighbour's dog in the back garden. I could hear the mowers going. So I had to make sure that I was comfortable and concentrating. Meanwhile, my husband was joking that he could hear the zebra crossing beeping whenever someone pushed the button for the green man, and that was a bit disconcerting. So think about your environment because it will potentially have an impact. When it comes to studying, try and use different sources. Quite often they'll recommend a particular training series, perhaps one that they offer. That's certainly the case with Elastic and with Amazon and a lot of the other other cloud providers rather. But that's not the only resource you can go to. And it might be that when it covers a particular topic, for you, that particular topic might not sit so comfortably, and you might need to find another explanation to really hone that into your head. So a really good example for me was when I was covering complex aggregations with the Elastic training, it just wasn't really getting in there. I didn't feel comfortable that I really knew it as I should in order to sit this exam. So I actually ended up looking for other resources, like I would chat to colleagues or I would check out some content on YouTube. But there's all sorts of different ways that you can do it. You can try different exercises, practice exams. There is no wrong way to prepare for an exam. So think about using different sources to reinforce that knowledge and don't rely on just a training course to get you through. The next thing you need to do is you need to practice and then some more. Just like when anyone who's ever learned a musical instrument knows, you need to keep practicing to get better at it. The reality is that often you're covering technologies that you'll be using in your day job. So irrespective as to whether it is that multi-choice exam that I talked about my husband took, or if it's your own practical exam as it was in my experience, you're going to need to know how to use these things. And you're going to need to be comfortable with how they work. So when you're practicing, try and avoid doing copy paste from examples you find. Try and actually type out commands, because in that way, you're reinforcing another part of your brain and you're actually managing to, it's kind of like doing two things at once. It basically reinforces the learning. So that's a good tip that I found that helped. The other thing you should really do is if you get an error message, don't panic and jump immediately to Google to try and search Stack Overflow or whichever resource to find the solution. Have a look at the error messages. Get comfortable with the language, because if you have an error like that in an exam, it means you're less likely to panic and you'll be able to find the right solution in order to solve the problem, potentially on your own without any documentation or help. Now, the last thing you need to do once you do pass irrespective of if it's your first exam, your second exam, your 10th exam, regardless of how many attempts it took, is you need to celebrate. Often there's a lot of different certifications that are available by institutions, or it might be they're part of a program of multiple exams that you can use to showcase your knowledge. And the reality is it's really easy to just dive into the next one and not realize that you did something absolutely amazing here. So do take that moment to celebrate. Call your mum or your friend or whoever it is that you want to cheerlead and shout about. Put that certification on your LinkedIn and list it in places so people know that you've made it. And also do something to treat yourself to celebrate, like I did, where I went out for lunch with my family. So thank you very much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed hearing my story about certification and how these tips have helped me to pass. So the main ones are: make sure you practice, think about your format and your environment under which you're taking the exam, try and use different formats as much as you can, and celebrate when you finally make it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Carly.
You're welcome.
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I have, because I always have the fear of the unknown. So are you able to actually get hold of, like, to actually do dummy runs of the exams to really feel how they are?
There are practice exams available for most certifications. So the Elastic Certified Engineer one that I did does have a practice exam that you can take. And I actually did that because I'm like you. I think the other advantage with those ones is you also get a feel for the language of the questions, which I find to be really helpful. Even from my days at school, I was really reliant on practice papers towards the end. And even after I took the practice paper, there was some questions I wasn't comfortable with. And I was a bit like, oh, should I book this exam? And it was kind of like a bit more, I needed a nudge to book it in the end, but I did. And I'm glad I did. So there's normally practice papers available. If you're going through a training, you might get the practice paper coupon code, which I think is what happened with my husband with AWS. So it means that you can use that code to get the practice paper. So definitely those are available. And sometimes people will have sample exercises available if you have a Google, and you can try those out as well. So there's definitely resources like that available if that's going to help.
That's really good to know. Thank you. That's really helpful. Wow, what a brilliant lunchtime lightning talk session. Thank you so much to Natalie, Nadia, Ope and Carly for speaking to us today. It's been brilliant to hear from all four of you. And thank you everybody else for joining us today. Again, it's been brilliant to see you. And I look forward to seeing you at our next LJC event. As I said at the start, if you would like the recording, give it a couple of days and you'll be able to get it on our YouTube channel, which I will just paste in the chat for you now. Also, I am trying to get into the habit of when I do some posting on LinkedIn, being able to put the video up there for you when it's ready as well. So keep your eyes open on our YouTube channel for it, but I will do my best to get it out there on the social media channels as well once it's available. So you'll be able to find it that way too. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. It's been an excellent session, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you at our next LJC event. Have a great rest of your day and a brilliant weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.